Population Council.
Oh, Dr. Letitia Apia.
Celebrated. I missed her birthday, and so a belated happy birthday to you, Dr. Letitia. That doesn't mean that the party, I mean, we should still have it. So
very important.
Very, very important. And tomorrow, am I going to see you, Winston?
Yes.
For the book launch?
Yes, I should be there.
Are you coming with her?
I'll check her time.
Listeners, note there was a pause.
Yeah, because I didn't want to make a promise.
No, I understand.
So I'll check her time. I'll discuss. Yes, I would have to discuss with her.
All right. Okay. All right. I'll be. Oh, please introduce her to me when you come.
I will.
Because I haven't met her yet.
Sure.
And who knows? I may surprise her.
Yeah, very important.
With a parcel. So, if you do not know what we're talking about, is the launch of my book. Let's talk about sex tomorrow at the Labadi Beach Hotel, time 6 p.m. We have limited spaces because of the COVID things, but you can then join us online and let's all celebrate this. And that's the way I am celebrating my birthday. Tomorrow, 20th July, is my 67th birthday. In celebration of the day, I have, over the last week, been sharing with you my journey in life and some of the things that have influenced me to date. I worked with Asempa Publishers for national service, and after that, the company was good enough to retain me and make me a regular staff. I played various roles at Asempa, beginning as publications officer and rising through different roles till I became the head of finance and marketing. Along the way, I became the creative editor, a role that combined the work of an acquisitions editor and that of the development editor. For those who are not too familiar with the publishing world, over 90% of the books you see published, if you enter any bookshop, over 90% of the books you see there are not the brainchild of the authors whose names are on the books, but the brainchild of the acquisitions or creative editors. Indeed, the major publishing houses in the world do not have time to read and assess any manuscript that is sent in unsolicited, and they do not bother with them. So, Winston, if you just wrote a book and you sent it out to any of these major publishers, nobody's going to look at it.
I see.
They have no. They don't. I remember talking with one when I traveled to tour publishing companies abroad. One of the biggest publishing company at the time, they don't read even one. They send them all back. So they return it with a form letter. And I asked, why don't you even read? Because you never know. He said, well, if you went to the refuse dump and you search through it, you may find some valuable item. But why should you waste your time going through so much garbage? In the hope of discovering that valuable item. It's not worth it. So, the creative editor scans the marketplace to see what gaps there are in the market and what problems people are looking for solutions to, and comes up with a book concept that will meet the need to fill the gap. And then he goes searching for the author who can write the concept into a publishable manuscript that can then become a published book. And when the creative editor finds the writer, he works with the writer till his initial vision for the book is fully realized.
Okay.
I love the role of the creative editor for several reasons. It gave me the opportunity to be as creative as I could and gave me the opportunity of meeting intellectually stimulating and creative people. The relationship between a creative editor and a writer can be a very close one because a book project can take years to complete. And over that period, the editor and the writer are a team and they interact very frequently. Now, one of the authors I had the privilege of working with was a distinguished professor from KNUST. He was outstanding in his field with a platform that went beyond the shores of Ghana. He was based in Kumasi, but he traveled to Accra almost every week for official business. And he would always stop by my office as his first point of call on his arrival. He was almost always accompanied by his lovely wife. The woman was always dressed like the traditional illiterate woman in cloth, and she always spoke to me in the vernacular. She would just sit and watch as her husband and I discuss and review the progress of the book. She never said a word during those meetings. She just listened. She just sat down. Now, Winston, to my great shame, I confess that after weeks of she arriving in cloth, with her head tied with scarf, just like my illiterate mother, and without saying anything in my interactions with her husband, I began to think that she was a woman with a very low educational background. I began to think that the reason she was quiet was because what her husband and I were talking about was a little above over her head. After weeks of having her coming with her husband and just operating as an observer, I began to feel bad for her. I was sure she should be bored. And so one day I decided to see if I could draw her out. So I asked her, Auntie, when you come with your husband to Accra and he gets busy with his business, what do you do? How do you occupy yourself? She said, and kindly and gently, she said, I also have business to do in Accra, and so I just get on with it.
Okay.
When she said that, my mind went straight to Makola. I thought, oh, she must be a trader. So I said, I've never asked, but what business do you do? And she said, I teach.
Wow.
Winston, maybe this is where I should have stopped and concentrated on what I was doing with her husband. But no, Ebo had to go on to embarrass himself. I thought that she would be a woman who maybe, if she went to school, maybe went to teacher training college.
Okay.
And is teaching at an elementary school or something like that. I asked her, whose school do you teach in? She said, I teach at a university.
There you go.
Again, maybe I should have left it at that, but to my shame, I went on. I could not believe that this traditionally dressed woman actually taught at the university. I knew that to teach at the university, one had to have a minimum of a master's degree.
Yes.
And looking at the way this woman dressed like an illiterate woman, I did not think she even had a first degree. So, in my mind, I thought she meant she worked at the university, not that she actually taught at the university. So I asked, you teach or work at the university? And she replied with infinite patience, I teach at the university. And then she dropped what to me was a bombshell. Winston, she was a professor in science.
Wow.
She was actually a professor in the most difficult area of science. She was a full professor at the time, and she was even bigger in academic circles than her husband.
Wow.
I don't know if I did a good job at hiding my shock, or not, but I learned two important lessons that day. First, I learned never to judge anyone by their appearance, and then I learned to be nice to everyone because you never know. These are the lessons that have served me well. About 15 years later, I was working with an automobile company as a sales and marketing manager. We dealt in very quality, expensive cars. One day, I walked into the showroom to find a man walking around by himself in the showroom. My staff were at their station and could see the man, but none of them was attending to him. And to be fair to them, the man did not look like he belonged in the place. He was wearing a faded African print shirt over a khaki shorts. He was wearing an old slippers on his feet, and he had an old newspaper folded under his left arm. He looked more like someone who had strayed into the showroom than a potential customer. But I remember the lessons from my Asempa days, and so I went to him and said, Sir, how may I help you? And he said, oh, I'm looking for a car to buy. I took him around the cars in the showroom and made a pitch for each of them. All this time, my staff were snickering in their corner and wondering why I was wasting my time with such a man. After he had seen all the cars we had on offer, he said, is there a place we can sit and talk? Sure, I said, and took him to my office. All this time, I had no idea who I was dealing with. I was only putting into practice the big lessons I had learned at Asempa: never to look down on anyone and never to dismiss anyone. In my office, he said to me, I want to buy 2 cars.
Hey.
I want the most expensive car on offer for myself, and then I want one that is a step lower than that for my wife. I do not need the cars now. My wife and I are taking a trip abroad for holidays. I will be gone for 6 weeks, but my wife will continue on to see our children in Europe. They were going for holidays in Europe, but he will come back from Europe. The wife was continuing to America to visit their children there. Do you think you can have the cars ready for my return in 6 weeks? Listen, it was the best news I had heard that whole week. I was selling 2 cars, 2 of my most expensive cars, to a walk-in customer. But the news was to get even more interesting. The man opened the old newspaper he was carrying, and he had a checkbook inside. He said to me, I do not have CDs. I have just executed an EU contract, and so I have only euros. I'm going to write you a check, and you will have enough time to clear the check before I return from my journey. Can you please convert the amount into euros for me so I can write you the check? And that is how I sold 2 expensive cars to a man who did not look like he belonged to the showroom. Winston, never judge anyone by their appearance alone. Always treat everyone with respect, because you never know who you are dealing with. You never know. And Winston, that's my presentation for this morning.
Thank you very, very much, Shanklebo. Of course, you never know who
you're
dealing with. And that is food for thought this morning, brought to us by the Roverman Productions. But it's time now for the Joy Business Minute. It's brought to us by Consolidated Bank Ghana. CBG, we stand with you, and also brought to us by Vodafone. Together